Photoshop 2020 now ships with, by my count, 388 new custom vector-based shapes. Now, that number might change by the time the program ships, but for now, it's 388, and that's in addition to the hundreds of shapes that Photoshop has included in the past. And you can draw these shapes just by dragging with the Custom Shape tool, as I'll demonstrate in this movie, or by dragging and dropping from the Shapes panel, as we'll see in the next movie. And so I'm going to start things off by clicking and holding on whatever shape tool is available down here toward the bottom of the toolbox, and I'll select this guy, the Custom Shape tool. Now notice up here in the options bar that we have this shape option. If you click on this little thumbnail right here, you'll bring up a pop-up menu, which may contain the old school shapes that we've always had. So it's very possible you could end up entirely missing this feature. And these would be shapes that were transferred over from Photoshop CC. But notice if you drag this bottom right corner here that you can expand this pop-up panel so that in addition to the old default shapes, we're seeing nearly 36 folders. And those folders contain new shapes that have never been available inside Photoshop before. So prior to this version, the entire set of custom shapes available to Photoshop included a single tree. Now we have 3 folders of trees, as you can see right here. All right, I don't want to belabor this, but I do want to show you a couple of things. You have that Control or Command key trick. So if you press the Control key or the Command key on the Mac and click on one of these twirly triangles, you're going to twirl them all open. If you Control or Command click again, you're going to twirl them all closed. I'm going to go ahead and twirl open this guy right here, Flowers. And I'll select any old flower shape, doesn't really matter exactly which one. And then I'll go ahead and hide that pop-up panel, and I'll draw inside of the image window. Now, it's a little bit hard to see what in the world's going on right now, and that's because by default, our path outlines are blue, and I'm working inside of a blue image. And so to make things a little more obvious, I'll click on the settings icon right there, and I'll change the color to, let's say, light red, so that things stand out a lot better. And so I'll just go ahead and undo the creation of that shape by pressing Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac. And now I'll drag again. And I want to show you, as in the past, if you want to constrain the proportions of your shape, then you need to press the Shift key. And by the way, you can use the space bar in order to move that shape on the fly. And then as soon as you release, you'll go ahead and create your new custom shape. And notice that it's trapped in between this background right here, which comes to us from the Dreamtime image library for what that's worth. But then I have this pattern layer, the water pool pattern, sitting on top of it. And notice that it's set to the linear light mode with a fill opacity value of 88%. All right, so I'll just go ahead and turn on the other 2 layers. My point is that this vector-based shape layer is sandwiched in between. And so what I'm going to do is switch over to the swatches panel, and then I'll change the color to RGB yellow like so. Now, one other difference associated with Photoshop 2020 is the behavior of Free Transform. By default, it now scales vector-based shapes proportionally. And to see what that looks like, I'll press Control-K or Command-K on the Mac to bring up the Preferences dialog box. And then you want to make sure Use Legacy Free Transform is turned off, so that we can witness the default behavior inside 2020. And so I'll go ahead and click OK, and then I'll go to the Edit menu and choose Free Transform Path, or you can press Control-T here on the PC or Command-T on the Mac. And now notice if I drag a corner handle or a side or top or bottom handle that I end up scaling proportionally. This was not the case in the past. If you want to scale non-proportionally, then you press the Shift key as you drag any handle, by the way. Anyway, I want things to remain proportional, so I'll press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo that last scale, and I'll go ahead and make this guy a little bigger just by dragging a corner handle here, maybe drag it over to the left a little bit, and then press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac to accept that change. Now, notice at this point that our path outlines appear in red. If you want those path outlines to disappear, because after all, they're not really a visible component of the image, then just go ahead and switch back to something like the rectangular marquee tool. And if that doesn't work, it should have worked, that's for sure. But if it doesn't, go ahead and switch, let's say, to the black arrow tool, the one that Photoshop calls the path selection tool, then click off the shape in order to deselect it. And now those path outlines will disappear. And that is how you take advantage of those 388 new custom shapes. Maybe it'll be even more here inside Photoshop 2020.